welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Turn the Page. I'm your host today, Jen, and I am joined by my illustrious colleague. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Stacy.
Hi, Stacy. And we are joined by two fantastic writers, podcasters, have done such interesting things around our favorite genre, horror, and we are so excited to be here. So welcome. Could I ask you to introduce yourselves and your book, please?
Yeah, thank you so much for having us, first of all. I'm Kimmy. I'm half of Nightmare on Film Street.
I'm John. I'm the other half.
Nice.
And we're both a little stuffed right now because we have colds. I'm very sorry. I'm just gonna address it. Everyone already knows.
That's great because I'm a good editor, but not a great editor, you know. So
I do zero editing of this podcast.
Okay.
I just show up on episodes.
Yeah, like the podcast is so cool, and I'm so excited to ask you about both this, your journey to the podcast, and to the book that we're also here to discuss today.
Yeah, well, so glad to hear you guys are horror fans. So this is going to be a breeze talking about our favorite genre.
I know. We needed more horror obsessed librarians when we were growing up. My library, actually, I had one really cool librarian, but most of them were just like, I think you want to read Lord of the Rings. That's it.
Where's the Goosebumps at?
Yeah. We needed more Goosebumps. We needed more. What's that guy you love?
Christopher Pike.
There we go.
Oh, I was gonna say, yeah. I honestly think most of us horror fans got our start with, like the Holy Grail, any Fear Street, Goosebumps, Christopher Pike books, because they were the easiest access. Your parents weren't pre-reading them. They were like, yeah, this stuff is all fine. You can have the evil sponge under the sink. I'm sure that's not gonna mess you up later.
Or your parents were obsessed with Stephen King. That's the other thing, right? Like I think everyone's house in the 90s was just loaded with Stephen King books.
Yeah, so we've been lifelong horror fans, and we're actually married. We got married in 2015, and around 2016, it was after planning that huge wedding, which in itself is like starting a business. Like you're planning a huge event. It takes like 2 years to plan it.
We got married on Halloween,
as is the fashion. And we started Nightmare on Film Street. It combined our love of horror and, wanting to be entrepreneurs. We were like, how can we turn this passion we have into like a business, into something that we do both for love and money?
Yeah. Like no matter what you start, whether it's, like a makeup company or like a PR agency or anything, like you're going to end up putting more time into it than you expect. So it better be something you love, right?
Yes, absolutely.
I'd say that as I love being a librarian. So
there you go.
Yes.
And you're surrounded by books all day. What's to hate about that?
Yeah.
I know we have a friend who's a librarian, and he seems so stoked about going to work every single day.
Nice, gotta say,
I say we're pretty blessed.
Yeah. So, where did the idea then come from to combine your love of horror with the beautiful art of mixology?
Yeah, so we've always been obsessed with cocktails, and through the podcast, we would go to lots of different film festivals across Canada and the United States, and we always tried to make the trip just a couple days longer than it needed to be, so we could explore the cities a little more. And we would always come home with little tchotchkes and stuff, but also just like ideas for cocktail recipes, like stuff that we wanted to try and recreate at home, especially from New Orleans. So we had every time we go to New Orleans, we discover a new cocktail. And then when you come home and try and make it, you usually end up discovering something entirely on your own. And during the pandemic, we started hosting parties, which this was 100% Kim's idea because she was going stir crazy.
Yeah, especially during the pandemic. I think a lot of us picked up new hobbies during the pandemic, and we were always kind of casual mixologists beforehand. But when you don't have anywhere to go on Friday night, Saturday night, and it's going on, the third month of it, you're like, well, how can we make this fun. We tried to eventify our Friday and Saturday nights and made like, we're watching another movie on Friday because we can't go anywhere. We tried to make it special and making cocktails that paired with the movie we were watching. And then we started doing that online with our live watch parties with our supporters of the podcast on Patreon. And it just kind of stuck through after the pandemic. We're just still making cocktails.
Yeah.
And when Page Street, our publisher, reached out to us and they were like, hey, do you guys want to do a book? And we were like, boy, do we.
Yeah, they definitely thought we wanted to do something like a series of essays, like 100 ghost movies to watch before you become one.
I love that.
Which would be great. I think that was honestly one of the ones even we pitched. But yeah, we were really gung-ho about doing this cocktail book just because there wasn't really a huge space for horror-themed cocktails, and we really thought that this was like something that we're passionate about, something we love doing, and we were absolutely willing to put in the hours to make a cocktail book.
And it's a way that we could celebrate the movies that we love and talk about the movies we love. We do that a little bit in the book as well, so it's not just cocktails, but it's also kind of expanding your palette one way or the other. Either it's getting you into more horror movies if you're not a huge horror movie fan, or it's breaking you into the art of mixology if you're a horror movie fan and you're kind of curious about the world of cocktails.
No, we got the advanced copy, so I read it as the, I guess, ebook version. And I was reading it and I finished it today, and I already rated it on Goodreads because I use Goodreads 5 stars. But I was just like, what more can you ask for of like mixology, fun facts, a little like pop quiz? There's something for everything in it, which I really like. So well done.
Yeah, that was. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was a huge focus that we wanted to try and not like every single subgenre has to be represented, but like there are so many different corners and pockets in horror movies and in cocktails as well. Like there's so many different base spirits, so we really wanted to try and make it a good spread of everything.
Nice. Yeah, in the book you show that you do have like this truly encyclopedic knowledge of horror movies. How did you even like begin the process of narrowing down for this book? Like, did you approach all of like your favorite movies with like a cocktail lens? Like, which of these would make a good cocktail?
I think it started with a short list of like, okay, what movies do we love? What movies could we do a cocktail for? And I think we had like 120 movies. We were like, this is way too many movies.
Yeah.
So we started kind of going through them and just seeing if we could like evoke flavors from them, or like a color palette, or like something that we could do a garnish that represents the movie. So we kind of were just trying to make a short list of things that evoke something that we could replicate in the cocktail world.
Yeah, and some of them seemed to be like obvious choices.
Some of them were just title puns.
Yeah,
they started out with a title like the Drag Mai Tai Hell. Or
yes, exactly.
The Negroni Nomicon.
We worked backwards from the cocktail title. The Negroni Nomicon was one I was gonna bring up because it was just like, okay, well, obviously we're gonna have an Evil Dead cocktail. And Negroni Nomicon just made the most sense.
Once we thought of it, we were like, it has to be in the book,
well,
so it needs to make a good Negroni.
And then, of course, the garnish for that is the Book of the Dead. Like, why wouldn't you?
Yeah, that was cool to see.
Oh, thanks.
I was like,
it
oh
was
my
a
God.
pain to work with. Huge pain to work with because the room we were making we were doing the photo shoot in kept getting warm, and the Necronomicon kept folding back.
As we were taking photos, so like I'd have to rush in and like push his corners up and run out of the photo.
Yeah, like he was just like getting real bored and sad.
Well,
He was a diva on set.
The photos are great. Like, did you guys have all the input on it? Was it the photographer? They were just really like stunning.
Yeah, no, our photographer, Reham, she's incredible. And she's also a huge horror fan, which was a surprise. Like, we didn't know that when we started talking to her. And she had never had the opportunity to work in something spooky before. Like, she mostly does food photography. And she's incredible at it. And this was just like a dream come true for her to be able to just start working in like fog and fake blood and stuff. And it was a real collaborative effort between the three of us. Like, we had a lot of different meetings about every single cocktail. There were a few that we had ideas for, but when we went in, like we just kind of ended up throwing them away and did something on the fly. But yeah, between the three of us, we really workshopped every single photo.
Yeah, we basically showed it up at her house one week with a suitcase full of spooky props. Oh, yeah. And we had like our little planner for all the cocktails we were going to do. But then like once we got into it, some of them we were just like building out of. Her kitchen was like a disaster zone of props and everything. Like we were making fake ice. We were doing it all.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Even for the Jason Takes a Manhattan cocktail, like we wanted to make it look
Yeah.
like a dirty back alley in New York. It was garbage day outside, and I went out into people's recycling bins and just grabbed a bunch of like dirty newspapers,
Pizza boxes.
It was crazy.
Ah, that's great. There's a real like sort of like theater kid energy to it of like, let's put this show on and make these great photos. Like,
Yeah.
that's really beautiful.
That was really important to us because especially starting out, we were like, we don't want it to be like illustrations. We want people to be able to flip through and pick what they want to drink based on what the drink looks like. Oh, I'm feeling something sweet, or I don't want anything super complicated. I don't want to make a whole boat garnish. You can literally flick through and be like, okay, that's not for now. That's not for now. Or this one I'm feeling like. It's so much easier to do that without having to like, okay, what's the flavor profile of this one? You can really tell based on the color of the drink, how it's served. And also, too, we wanted it to make that, too, a special thing for horror fans. A lot of the photos have super deep Easter eggs in them, so you might not catch them the first look through, but the second time you're like, is there a button in there? Why is that button there?
Yeah, there's tons of little Easter eggs like that. And yeah, like the photos themselves, like beyond having to highlight the cocktail, like we also had to evoke the movie or a scene from the movie as well, which was another added element, but was like super fun to do. Like we basically got to either like recreate a scene from a movie or posters for movies, like Chopping Mall. We like in the background, we kind of like made the Chopping Mall poster with the shopping bag that has body parts spilling out of it in the movie poster, but in ours it's VHS tapes.
That's awesome.
That is great. In terms of the presentation in these photos as well, I'm interested in glassware. That might be like a weird question, but is the
Oh, no.
glassware like sometimes a purely aesthetic choice, or is it sometimes like suit the, the ingredients? Like what goes into that choice too?
Oh yeah. So sometimes it's definitely a little bit aesthetic. Like anything in the tiki chapter, like the problem with doing photographs for everything and wanting to show what the cocktail looks like is you can't always put stuff in tiki mugs, even though they look awesome. You got to be very careful with that. There was one cocktail that we bought a glass for. It actually was the correct glass for the drink, but we bought it purely because it was purple, and we actually bought it the day before we did the shoot. We just stumbled upon it in a bookstore. It was like a coupe glass that was purple for the purple porn star, which is based on Frankenhooker. But a lot of them are definitely based on like this is the correct glass for this drink, but also the cutest glass we could find for this drink.
Yeah.
And we had a lot of fun too. Like Reham was amazing. She rented like 50 different glasses. So if something was supposed to be served in a rocks glass, we had a bunch to choose from. One, that we weren't repeating them, but two, that we could pick the one that best like went with the movie. Like one of my favorite glasses was one that she provided. It was a coupe style champagne glass for our mummy cocktail, and it's got these great like lines on the outside of the glass, and it's a good glass for the cocktail itself, but it kind of has that like hieroglyph look to it, and it just really worked.
Yeah, we brought some glassware from home.
We did fly though, so it was very dangerous.
Yes, there were some really dainty glasses we have at home that we decided not to bring last minute. But yeah, like Reham did an incredible job of just lining up hundreds of glasses for us to choose from.
Oh, that's cool. Because like I don't drink a lot. And one of the things I like noted throughout going through the whole book is you guys not only have like the image for every single drink, you have the flavor notes, which I'm like, I didn't even know this is what it's supposed to taste like. Like, and I'm like, oh, this makes it less intimidating. And I mean, we're talking about like horror, like less scary for someone to kind of want to try it, to be like, oh, like that's kind of cool. Like this kind of, that. And when you have like the mocktails like mentioned in the back, that you want to match like the flavor profile of it. And like I never would have thought of that. I would have been like, I can never drink this ever. So
thank you so much. That's so nice to hear. And like that, because that 100% was the goal, like we wanted to make it approachable and unintimidating, because we've had the same problem with cocktail books as well. Like we've gotten cocktail books that have no photos. We've gotten cocktail books that
or just has like a really elusive ingredient in it. And like we kind of live in the middle of nowhere, and our access to like fun and fancy liquors is not always the greatest. So we wanted to make sure with the substitution guide, and with any liqueur or any fancy thing that we included, we had a substitution for it in the back of the book, so that if you really wanted to make a cocktail, you can use what you have on hand, and we'll give you the best way to replicate it as close as possible. But also, if you're going out and buying a fancy liqueur that you wouldn't normally use, there's at least 2 or 3 cocktails in here you can make with it. So if the first cocktail you try, you don't love it, there's something else you can try, so you're not stuck with a whole bottle of something you don't know how to use.
That was the first thing I thought of, because we've had the same problem before where we buy this bottle. I'm like, oh, I hated that drink. Now
you're like, what do I do with
never
this?
Gonna use this again.
You know, like I will blame one of my friends who I recommended the book for. I was like, I think you'd like this. I'm reading it now and we're doing a podcast. Like, check out the book, because he does on his Instagram. He matches alcohol with books and usually has his pets or other people's pets like featured in it. But whenever he visits us, he's like, here's alcohol. And I'm like, I don't, how do I put it in the cabinet? We don't need this. But like in your book, like it could be like, oh, like this could be used for something. Or like, maybe I'll invite you over, Jen. And be like, we're taste testing ourselves.
Yes,
but you do have a lot of gin drinks in your book. And it does make me want to try them. Because normally I'm like, gin tastes like juniper and like pine tree.
Yeah, so like that was 100% the same impression we had years and years ago. And then we had a couple gin drinks that we were like, oh my God, I can't believe there's gin in this. Because gin, you're like, I always think that it tastes like the barbicide at the barber. Like that was my impression when I was 18 and I was just doing really bad gin and tonic.
Yeah, or if you only have had it with tonic and you're like, I don't like bitter.
Yeah, it's the tonic. The tonic has a bunch of flavors.
Exactly.
That's true. It does show that like a lot of the flavors are more versatile than you might think. Like,
yeah, like we tried to make them really approachable and fun, and some of them are also twists on drinks that we think. Like a martini is a hard one, right? Because a martini is just like, that's for serious
It's
drinkers.
alcohol.
Yeah, it's just cold alcohol. And Negronis, if you're new to cocktails and somebody's like, oh, here, have a Negroni. It's one of the most popular cocktails in the world right now. You're like, oh, this just is very bitter. Like, I don't understand why people drink this. So we tried to do some twists for people who are new to cocktails to make them a little more approachable. And also, like, I personally think that the Negroni could be a little bit sweeter, so we add a little sugar to it.
Love that.
yeah.
So do you guys have a favorite drink in the book? Is it the same for the both of you, or you each have your own?
It's not the same for both of us, and it's not the same day to day. Like,
yeah, I feel like it changes. And the problem too is we've been having these launch parties, so we've been making the cocktails and serving them with the watch parties we've been doing. So right now my favorite is just the last cocktail I had. Which is the Price is Rye. It's like an old fashioned. It's inspired by The House on Haunted Hill and Vincent Price. It's actually based on a recipe that he made himself. He did a cookbook with Angostura bitters in like the 1950s, and he had his own old fashioned, so we did a little spin on that. We made it a little bit more Canadian with rye and maple syrup. And it's the biggest difference is that it's an old fashioned, which is normally just like a whiskey in a rocks glass with a little bit of orange. And it's topped with soda, so it's like a lot more sippable, and you can kind of hold it for an hour and not have that watered down quality to it. It's just really yummy.
Yeah, one of the best things about cocktails in general is that, like, you just change one ingredient and it's kind of
it's
almost
entirely
a
different cocktail.
Yeah. So like you sub out like your demerara syrup or sugar or brown sugar for the maple syrup. Or obviously we're gonna keep orange. Nobody wants to get rid of orange. And you go from bourbon to rye, and it's wildly different. And then having the soda on top's nice, because I find when I get an old fashioned, I like to let it sit for a little while, melt a little bit. So having the soda kind of just makes it purely drinkable right away, which is nice, and also slightly dangerous. One of my favorites is definitely the Pet Cemetery cocktail. It's very earthy and sweet. It's pear flavored. It's I think maybe the only drink we have in the book that's anything with pear. But I also really like, this is a very simple drink, but it's our Lost in the Woods cocktail, which is paired with the Blair Witch Project. It's essentially like it's a take on the Fernet Concola. It's Coca-Cola and Fernet, and we have rosemary in it as well. It's very it's very foresty, and I've really just kind of like fallen in love with Fernet recently. It is a little bitter as well, but it really brings out other flavors in an interesting way. It's super easy to make.
And it's so weird to be able to make a classy drink with cola.
Yeah.
Because it does really elevate it. Like it is kind of just like a whiskey cola or like a rum and coke, but you're using Fernet, so it's like elevated in a weird way. You're like, oh, I could pinkies up for this cola.
And then like depending on the garnish you put, like if you were to swap out the rosemary for mint or something, like it's completely different. Like once like your nose is sampling that drink way before your lips and your mouth, your tongue is. Like it's the whole system sort of processing those flavors.
Yeah. And that's something I think that is a strength of the book in general, is that it's like, it's not just about like following the steps to make this cocktail, but it's about the experience of not only like making the cocktail and like what it's going to be like when you are looking at it or when you are drinking it, but it's also about like, yeah, pairing it with a movie for a movie night, like with your loved ones or your friends. And so there's like something about, you know, savoring the entire experience in an almost like mindful way, you know?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. I know, like we do this a lot at home, even if it's just the two of us. Like I'll build these pre-shows to watch before the movie. So like I'll find like an old trailer card for like AMC theaters from like the early '80s, and I'll put
It's
on
like, don't smoke, don't use your phone.
yeah, making in the theater, and or it'll say like smoking sections in the back. That's always a wild one where you're like, oh wow, people used to smoke in theaters. And then like movie trailers that would have come out in the same year. A Coca-Cola commercial is always a good staple, just to sort of like get you into the vibe of what you're about to watch. It's how we've always approached our watch parties.
That's so
Like
cool.
we always have these trailers reels, because I think there is always a best way to enjoy something, and if you can sort of like slip into it in a little more of a comfortable way, then you're primed to enjoy it.
Yeah, like get in the headspace. And it also just makes things more special. I think it's more enjoyable. Like we're so accustomed to, you know, like especially now with like Netflix and streaming services, just putting a movie on and then just staying on your phone, and then before you know it, the movie's over and you haven't watched it.
And you just put on another one.
And I think as somebody who loves movies, like I needed to fall back in love with them again. And like remember how special they are. They take like 3 years to make. It's a whole business that started around this one piece of art, and like hundreds of people got together to make it, this artistic vision. So it's like I can give it 2 hours.
That's super cool. And that is like another thing, as you were talking, I just thought that like, you know, these are all things that are also associated with like creating community. You know, like a movie theater is a community space. Like your friends in your house watching a movie and drinking cocktails with you is a community space. Or like, yeah, the production of like one of these movies. It's just like a very nice like ritual almost, you know.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Like we love a themed party, and a themed party is the easiest way for everybody to sort of like get on the same page and like ride the same wave into something. So like whether or not you're all together at your own apartment or your own house, or you're watching movies together online, like this is essentially like your how-to guide to eventize something and make it a party.
I like that because like the movie theater by my house is like one of those AMCs that like they have a bar in it, can have like a special drink for the movies. Like a friend went to go see Wicked, and like they have snacks tied in and this. And I think like being able to do this at home, or you know, we could have like this cocktail or a mocktail and be like, okay, like we're doing this, we're getting in the mindset, like we're seeing a movie, like let's dim the lights, let's, you know.
Yes.
I mean, I'm a fan of watching movies at home just because, like, if I need to pause it, I can run to the bathroom. I can run and get more snackies. Like, you know, I love that aspect. But, like, I miss being able to, like, have the experience of going out to a movie and
absolutely
doing this. And now I could kind of recreate it at home or with friends. But this is something, like, fun that I think a lot of people could do. And there's such a diverse amount of, like, movies that you guys have in the book. You know, you have the classics. You have some, like, newer ones. As I was, like, scrolling through, I slightly startled a colleague of ours because I got so excited seeing one of my favorite movies mentioned.
What movie?
House of a Thousand Corpses.
Oh,
hell yeah.
And I was like, oh my God. Like and he was kind of like, what got you so excited? I'm like, I'm reading this book, we're doing an interview later, but like they have one of my favorite movies. It's just so insane. And I loved learning the trivia that you have, like the little movie real fun fact at the bottom.
Yeah, it's such a crazy movie to have made a cocktail for it too, because you're just like, I wouldn't want to touch anything in that house.
No. Not trusting the glassware in that house.
No.
Thank you so much for coming to talk to us about this. What is on the horizon for you? Like clearly more podcasting, but like, do you think you have more books in you?
Oh, definitely.
Oh,
yeah.
we'd love to do a mocktails from the crypt.
Yeah, that'd
like
be
we'd love
great.
to do one that is all mocktails because mocktails are so big right now, but also too, like even as a cocktail drinker, you can enjoy a mocktail. Like
Yeah.
like the cocktail menus are getting so exciting when you go out that I'm like, maybe I do just want mocktails tonight. They're getting so inventive.
Yeah, and mocktails are also just like a fun extra challenge, right? You're like, okay, well, I don't have any alcohol to rely on. Like, where do you find more, interesting flavors and pairings, right?
You're like, how do I make this not just taste like a Shirley Temple?
Yeah, basically.
Because you're usually stuck with that as an option.
Yeah.
I would know, not just myself, but another one of our coworkers would 100% go all in for the mocktail book.
Yeah. Yeah. There are several people who would be on board for that book here. So,
Oh, yeah. I didn't think, I was just like, Jody.
Oh, yeah, for sure, Jody. Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, they'll also probably have to be horror fans because, like, I highly doubt we wouldn't just call it mocktails from the crypt. As long as they're cool like you two, then we're good.
Jody's cool.
Yes.
I think she likes scary movies.
She does, yeah. Well, yeah, thank you so much again for coming. Would you like to remind our listeners about the name of your book and where they can get it?
Yeah, our book's called Cocktails from the Crypt. You can get it anywhere you get your books. You might be able to find one at your local library.
Yay!
Consult your local librarian for,
No
for
pressure.
Cocktails from the
That would be
Crypt.
great, Cool. Well, thank you so much. This is Jen signing out.
Oh, and Stacy.
Yay. All right, it is time to close this chapter. We'll see you next time.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.